Good day, guten Tag, gute Dag, goeiedag. Thank you so much for having me. What an absolute honor it is for me to be here, given the opportunity to be invited into your home to talk with you. Ich möchte dich auf eine Reise mitnehmen. A journey through the intersection between my world and the world of the Jupyter project. Ich möchte Ihnen zeigen, was es für mich bedeutet hat. Hoe dit my lewe verryk het. Most of all though, I want to express my profound gratitude to everyone all over the world who gives of their time and their talent to bring us open source software, like the Jupyter project. Waar zouden we zijn zonder? Ontzettend bedankt. Not a day in my life goes by without using a notebook. Ek kan nie my lewe daarsonder indink nie. Aber zuerst eine Einführung. Kom met mir. If you don't know or you haven't guessed by now, I am a medical doctor and in fact a surgeon. This is a theatre and a place where I spend a lot of my time. Before we get to Project Jupyter, I think perhaps it's appropriate for us to talk about the coronavirus pandemic because it touches everything that I do and it's touched so many people all over the world. Our whole world has changed. Here in the hospital, of course, before I get to the patients, it's about the staff. So just operating and working in this environment has been so difficult and so different. You have to make decisions not only for the best for your patients, but also what is best for your staff. The theatre that I'm sat in now, this is called our clean theatre. So we would put cases in here that we know do not have COVID-19, but right behind me in the next theatre, that is our COVID-19 theatre. So we would get dressed up with all our PPEs and we've got all the rules and regulations as to who's allowed to go in there. And as we move in and out or move equipment in and out, there's rules and regulations for that. And the discarding our clothes, discarding everything that we worked with outside of that theatre. It really lengthens the whole procedure, the procedure that we go through from the patient coming in the front door till going back to the ward. The hospital is also split into different parts in that we have a section of the hospital where we put patients that are here for elective procedures and they come in with already having had a COVID test, so we know whether they are positive or negative. We have, of course, a section for COVID and also where we put people under investigation. So if someone comes in and they're displaying the symptoms and signs, even though they might be in hospital for something else, they might be here for an appendicitis or with appendicitis, diverticulitis, anything else. If they do have symptoms and signs suggestive of COVID disease, of course, they become a person under investigation. And we have a space in the hospital for them as well. Fortunately, we do get our results very quickly here, and that means we can decide where to manage the patient further. As I mentioned, this is one of the clean theatres, so cases that we do here have had very, very recent tests. That's what happens when you're on call. And at the moment, I'm on call 24/7, since at least for this part, I'm the only surgeon. But that's a call I don't have to take. Unfortunately, no matter what I do, the phone has to be with me. Let's not answer, or we don't have to answer that one. Where was I? We also go through testing for the staff, and that's everyone from the specialists like myself, nursing staff, and scrub sisters here in theatre staff on the ward, and also everyone else. There's so many people involved in running a hospital, from the cleaners, people who work in the kitchen, administrative staff. It really is, it's a big organization and a lot has to happen. So we get, our names get drawn and we go for COVID testing, and in that way we really keep things safe for the public, people who make use of the hospital. So very importantly then, everyone who is known to be negative gets into the clean side of the hospital, the staff that work there clean, and then of course for all of us that have to interact with people with COVID, we don our PPEs, everything that we do have to protect ourselves, and for that matter for everyone else that we have contact with, our family and friends and loved ones, and we don the PPE and we discard them properly. It's been amazing to be part of this pandemic. Who ever thought that during our lifetime we would live through a pandemic such as this? Of course, we never want this to happen again. But it's really been interesting this year being part of seeing how the organization of a hospital has changed, how everyone comes together, how quickly the rules and regulations got put in place, and how phenomenally actually it has been handled. Now in South Africa, we have resource constraints, and I'm going to talk a lot about these resource constraints in a minute or two. And so not as easy for us to deal with things, perhaps as countries with a bit more money and a bit more resources, but everyone has really gotten together. Now South Africa has one of the highest case rates in the world, and fortunately our mortality rate perhaps is not as high as we see elsewhere, but still a very large burden on the healthcare system in South Africa that's already constrained to start off with. I mean, it's extraordinary and perhaps expected how people came together and put rules and regulations in place for us to manage this pandemic. So it's very important, I think, for me to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to my colleagues here in the hospital, colleagues all over the world for having dealt with this, for getting up out of bed every morning, coming to hospital, putting yourself right in the line of fire, just walking straight up to it, facing it, and getting on with the job. That's been absolutely phenomenal, and I'm so proud to be part of a community who's done this, who are willing to face this, no matter what politicians say or do or decide to do. No matter what happens outside of those doors, the work here continues, and everyone stands up and battles this war that we are in. Of course, we're just all holding out for vaccinations to become available. Phase 3 clinical trials are being done for many of these, and we hope that most of those are successful and that the vaccines become available. And I think that will bring about a lot of change, and certainly for us, really what we are waiting for. For everyone out there, once it becomes available, I'll certainly be very near the front of the line to get my vaccinations. We have had quite a few of our colleagues here and all over the world have had COVID. Right here, we've had scrub sisters, we've had nursing staff. I've had some of my own colleagues have fallen ill. And unfortunately, we have also lost some people in our community here, in our healthcare community. It's very sad, and I really want to pay respects to those that, despite the risk to themselves, have pitched up for work and have paid the ultimate price. We have lost some brilliant people, and that is extremely, extremely sad. Of course, we've lost a lot of people. As I'm recording this, the mortality rate is over 1 million, and we're under-recording that mortality rate, so certainly a lot more people have died, and that is quite sad. Of course, a lot of research is ongoing, and that's really what I want to talk to you about. As a surgeon, I'm heavily involved in research, and from doing actual research, and I'll show you a little bit about that, to teaching research, and of course, one of my favorite tools, and that's the Jupyter notebook. So once I'm done here, I'm going to leave, and we're going to discuss a few things. One of the major topics that I'm so grateful to talk to you about is this disparity between how much research gets done all over the world, and how I think one of the solutions to the problem, and I'm going to show you the problem, is that we use open source software, and we use open source tools to do our data analysis, data science, statistics, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're involved in, is to do that with open source tools. And that is not only us here, because I'm talking to you as part of a different community that I'm so proud to be part of as well, is not only to do our research, but to empower and teach others to do it. And that is really something that I'm terribly excited about and have been so for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And that's to teach and empower people how to do data analysis, how to do data science, how to do statistical analysis. Because here, at least, we're in the unique position that people from all over the world come to us for some of their training, and they leave to go back to their home countries. And it is so important for them to have some knowledge and experience and have tools available for them to carry on the wonderful work that they've started here. And that is the problem with commercial software, because we do have it locally available. If you're at university, of course, there's site licenses for these. But once you leave these 4 walls, once you leave and go back home or just leave the university, you have to pay for those tools. And it becomes a barrier to the continuation of your career in research. And the use of something like a Jupyter notebook just solves all those problems. It just really empowers and enriches people to be able to go out and continue what they've started here. And also, we live in a completely different age. We live in an age where I can talk to you right now. We live in an age where if you want to learn something new, all you need is an internet connection. So you don't have to come to the university to get your education, at least to get some experience in the data science and data analysis. You can download the notebook as long as you have an internet connection, and you can learn how to use it. You don't have to come to me to do that. But the Jupyter notebooks have allowed me to do just that, to have students all around me and to teach them how to use this, to empower them how to use this. So later on, I will show you some of my work and how I use the Jupyter notebook, how it's enriched my life and how it's helped me to teach others. And teaching is just so important to me. In 2014, I was the Open Education Consortium's Educator of the Year, and that is just by making whatever I teach really available online. And over the last couple of years, so much of that has been made possible by the use of Jupyter notebooks. And so I've got to get out of my theatre scrubs and we'll go to my office. And here we are in my office. Now, I always assume that there are 2 types of people involved in what we're doing here. First of all, there are the users, such as myself. I use open source software for some goal, whether it be biostatistics or doing some physics or maths or teaching. And then you get the creators, people who actually create the software. And really, my hat goes off to you, developing the tools that we use. What a great thing to do. And I really do take my hat off to you. And I wish there was so much more time and so much more money for you to do what you do. One person that I want to mention particularly is Professor Lorena Barber, the person who is running this conference, who invited me to be a keynote speaker. I think some of the first notebooks I ever saw was her notebooks on fluid dynamics. And I didn't know anything about fluid dynamics then, but I certainly learned from those notebooks. I've been following what she's been doing for quite some time. And we met for the first time face-to-face in Delft in Nederland. And that was such a phenomenal meeting. A fantastic person, someone who is enthusiastic, who we can all look up to, and who certainly I look up to. Thank you for everything that you've meant in my life. And what we're going to do here is I'm just going to show you a notebook. I've done nothing fancy. It's not done in any particular nice way, but it is about the content of it that I want to talk to you about now. One thing about these notebooks is just the aesthetic of it. I mean, it's a web page for sure, but it's just, for me at least, it's just so elegant. It just looks nice. It's just such a nice environment to do your work in. It's such a nice environment to write some code and to share that with your collaborators, or to share that when you're teaching. It's just, the aesthetics of it just speaks to me. I just absolutely love this environment. So, as you can see there, just importing a bit of a cascading style sheet there, specific to this notebook. It's always something I do just to make it look a little bit different. And you can see what we're going to talk about here is our sorry state of research. And the way that I'm going to present it here, I'm going to show you data. It's not particularly accurate data. You'll see where I get the data from. and they certainly has better resources, and someone has looked at this in more of an academic way and can present this a bit better. But it's about the message that I really want to convey here. And here we are. I've just grabbed a screenshot here from YouTube, and you see JupyterCon in 2017, and it's the playlist of all the keynotes. And if we look down all the people there is Lorena coming there in 2017. And what I want you to do is pay attention to the faces, because I'm going to mention something about it. There we go, a lovely bunch of photos of people who were speakers back then. There we go, and we have 2018, the playlist of the keynote speakers there. And there we go, down. There's something about those faces. And let's get started. So I'm going to import some data. And the first one is just selecting the countries and regions that I'm going to use for comparison. So the first one, just low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and high income. Just a list of strings there. The second one, comparative countries. I'm going to compare a couple of countries with each other. First one is my home country, that's South Africa. Up north from us, across Zimbabwe, we find Zambia, the United Kingdom, Canada. I suppose I'll choose South Africa, United Kingdom, and Canada, and right at the bottom Australia for being English-speaking countries. And I'm also choosing France, Italy, Germany there, because they're sort of first world countries, competitive in population size as we are. So there are various reasons why I'm choosing these countries. Australia right at the bottom there, because if you follow the world of sports, that will be rugby union or cricket. You know that South Africa and Australia are great rivals. Of course, the biggest rival would be New Zealand, but New Zealand is kind of special. Small, very small nation there, so I didn't include it here. Some more regions, you see the Arab world, East Asia and Pacific, Europe and Central Asia, European Union, etc. And then lastly, you'll see BRICS there. Now, the BRICS is a specific set of nations that work together in a certain way. It used to be only BRIC, Brazil, the Russian Federation, India, China, and later on it was joined by South Africa. And there's certain cooperation between these countries and some plans for the future. Not all of them pan out properly, but it's certainly a bunch of countries that we can compare to each other. So the data is going to come from the World Bank. I think many of us know the World Bank data set, the World Bank website where you can get this data from. First one's just going to be the population. So that data set is just the total population, and it's based on the de facto definition of population, which counts all residents regardless of legal status or citizenship. So I've downloaded that from the World Bank, and we're just going to import that using pandas. And then they also have a section on scientific papers that you can download from the World Bank. So that's scientific and technical journal articles refer to the number of scientific and engineering articles published in the following fields: physics, biology, chemistry, math, clinical medicine, biomedical research, engineering and technology, and earth and space sciences. So imported that as well. And then we have the SciMargo, I don't know how to pronounce that, but anyway, the journal and country ranking. And that's a publicly available portal that includes the journals and country scientific indicators developed from information obtained in the Scopus database. So we're going to import that as well. And then just some data on research software. And I've chosen a couple of languages there: Python, R, SPSS. We'll have a talk about these, Stata and Statistica. And then lastly, I've just gone to PubMed. That is where we reference most or get most of our journal articles from in the medical world. And I've chosen a few journals, and these were journals to my specific field, which is surgery. So that's the Annals of Surgery, the British Journal of Surgery. So those are two leading journals in my field. Then a tiny little journal, the South African Journal of Surgery, and then the World Journal of Surgery. And I've looked at data from July, August, September in 2016 and 2020. And for a very specific reason, we're going to look at these software platforms and how often they are used to write journal articles in. So that's a little CSV file that I created, just sitting on PubMed and just going through all those journals for those specific months and the 2 different years. And we're just going to see how often these software packages are used. And I've saved that as a CSV file. So let's look at some data, and we're going to group the countries by income level. And all I'm going to do throughout this notebook is just show a bunch of very, very simple plots. So just a little bar plot, and we can see the population in billions there of low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and high income countries. Most countries then fall into that middle income group. So let's look at the number of published papers based on this income level. And we see, as we would expect in the high income countries, we see the most papers there at 1.45 million. But let's just divide that by the number of people in those regions and just express that as per 100,000 people in 2018. And this is why I call this notebook our sorry state of research. Look at the number of papers produced by the high income countries per 100,000 people and all the way down to low income. And as this notebook develops, I'll sort of give you an idea of my perspective and my reality on the ground as to one reason why this is so and what we can do about it. Because certainly, right at the left-hand side of this graph, there's a lot of knowledge there. There's a lot of brain power there. And if I think of my own world of healthcare, there's a lot of disease there, and there's a lot of solution to so much of the disease that we have lying right there. And with all that brain power, with all that potential, why is this so low, and what can we do about it? Now, I chose a few countries. I told you that before. Let's just have a look at their populations. And as I said, I chose Italy, France, and Germany because, first of all, countries, why not? Lovely, beautiful places. And you see, well, bar a couple of million people, it's sort of similar in number to South Africa. This would be 2018. I can tell you there's more people than that in South Africa. There's lots of illegal immigration coming down from Africa down across the border. And you see little Zambia there. I've had to include a place that is dear to my heart that I've traveled through and I've interacted with people there. And really a lovely country, as I say, just north of South Africa, you get Zimbabwe, and north of that you get Zambia. So there's your population count. Let's just look at the published papers. And as you can expect, it doesn't look good for these two African countries, at least, that I've chosen. But no matter which ones of those I choose, sort of the picture is going to stay the same. And we see the first world countries. Again, I'm going to divide this by the number of people that there are. So we can just look at the papers published per 100,000 people. And again, as I say, they're better data than this, but I want to illustrate a point. And again, for me, the sorry state of research. So let's just look if there's any difference between the different regions. Now, these are regions that the World Bank chooses to divide people in, or to divide the world in, I should say. And again, you can see the population there for these different areas. And then the number of papers again. And you see right at the right-hand side, Sub-Saharan Saharan Africa once again. Not doing too well. And again, expressing that per 100,000 people. And if you look at certain parts of the world, I'm not going to harp on my own continent, but many of the other areas, regions throughout the world where, just not enough papers are being published. There's nothing wrong with the brain power in those regions. There is nothing wrong with the potential of the people in those areas. There's something wrong with the systems, and we need to do something about that. I've got the H index here as well, and this comes from the other data set. And once again, you can see Western Europe and North America just leading the world as far as the average H index of the researchers there are concerned. Citable documents also from this data set. Once again, Western Europe, North America, and then the Asiatic region also producing then citable documents per region. But look at the other regions. Latin America there, the Pacific region, Africa, it's all painting the same picture. Total citations, I don't have to tell you where this is going. Again, we see Western Europe and North America in the lead, as you would expect, and look at sort of the other regions. Africa and the Middle East, Africa specifically, Pacific region, and I continue to ask the question, what can we do? What can we do about this? Total self-citations, same story. Looks like the Americans, though, North Americans at least, they self-cite their papers a bit more. And then interesting, at least for people involved in the BRICS set of nations, there we go. That's population again. Brazil, the Russian Federation, India and China, of course, the two leading countries as far as population size is concerned. And then little South Africa there on the right-hand side. Papers published. Again, you would expect that, just the number of people. That sort of mimics the population there. But again, expressing that per 100,000 people. And I want to bring India into the picture now. And a bunch of countries and regions that we refer to as the global south. Now, India's in the north. But the sort of idea that there are leading countries and then the countries in various ways of measuring the countries that just are living below their potential, at least. And at least you can see South Africa creeping up a bit there if we look at papers published per 100,000 people. So that was a snapshot in time, just a cross-sectional sort of data. So let's just look at the change over time. And so there's our little graph there, and that comes from 2000 till about 2018 here on the right-hand side, 2018. And that's papers published in various income level regions. So there's those same low income, low middle income. And again, with a low income right at the bottom. And you see there's not much change over time. So here we've had almost 20 years, 19 years worth of data here, and there hasn't been a great increase. And even if we look at the lower middle income, it's creeping up, but certainly, again, way under the potential. At least when we look higher up the income scale, things look a bit better, and there's certainly been a change over time. If we do that with the different regions, and we see there, again, that's the regions that the World Bank uses. And once again here, Sub-Saharan Africa, and all these areas, the Arab world, down here, Latin America, the Middle East, and then South Asia. You can see there's an increase over time, but certainly even then, it's not the sort of same increase as we see perhaps Northern America, that the increase is substantial, but not as much. And then if we go right up there, of course, East Asia, and the Pacific, a great increase there in papers published over time. But it's this bottom bit that always bugs me. So the BRICS set of nations, let's have a look at that. Of course, way up here we see China, certainly an increase since the year 2000. A lot of effort been put in there in publishing papers. And look, right down here, South Africa, really not much of a change over time. And certainly Brazil increase. The Russian Federation, especially over the last couple of years, and then also India with a great increase there. But again, I think if you're going to look at the African nations, that's not going to be, that is not going to look so good. So let's just look at the change over time, just as a fraction over time between 2018 and the year 2000. So at least in Sub-Saharan Africa, you see that fraction, but we're starting from such a low position. That this bar chart's actually not that informative. And if we look at the BRICS set of nations, again, depending on where we start, at least we see these fractions of change, but from the low levels that we start, not really that specific. So then, perhaps something more interesting. So research software in PubMed listed publications. So I've looked at Python, looked at R, SPSS. Now, we all know Python in this community, open source software, brilliant for data science. The same goes for R, which is a perennial favorite in the healthcare sciences. And I'll show you that. And SPSS, that's commercial software. That comes from IBM. And that's really been used for a long, long time in the healthcare world. And the same sort of goes for Stata and Statistica. A problem with this, in as much as I think at least this explains some of the reason, or at least a tiny bit of the reason, why the graphs that we've been looking at up till now are not the best. So let's look at this little graph, and we see right up here, we see SPSS, commercial software that I don't particularly like, but anyway, it exists, it's out there, and it's used tremendously. So we look from 1990 all the way to 2019 here. So that is just me going into PubMed and setting up an advanced search, just looking for the term SPSS in the paper. So we see the increase there as that gets used. Down here we see R, at least R. There is that's great to see. It's open source. It's free of charge. And imagine we can just make this available and teach this, or the use of it, at a much larger scale than we've been doing up till now. Then we see Stata, and at least Python is sort of starting to make some impression over the last couple of years, but certainly not anywhere near R, at least in this world of medical publications, and certainly not anywhere near the commercial software. And that, for me personally, is a massive tragedy. And I'll get to why that is so. So let's just look at the selected journals that I've mentioned. These are surgical journals. And so I've taken those time periods, looked at those papers specifically, and just created a spreadsheet file where I then note what kind of software was used for all the papers published in that time set. And again, it's the Annals of Surgery and the British Journal of Surgery, some of the leading, at least, journals in my field. The tiny South African Journal of Surgery, because why not? And the World Journal of Surgery. Now, the World Journal of Surgery, great journal, a lot published there from all over the world, although there is a kind of tendency for researchers to come from the first world into, I'm going to use the disparaging term, third world, and doing their research there and going back home. And some of that works wonderfully, and it empowers the local people, and some of it is unfortunately a bit of misuse. It is what it is. And I've got to call it out. So of the papers that were published in these two time sets, you see the numbers there. And just a little cross tab there, or group by statement function, at least in Python here. We see that the open source was only 9.5% versus 90.5% for commercial software in 2016. And we've seen at least this increase in the use of open source software, and that's basically R, much more so than Python, and 85% for commercial. So at least that proportion has changed. So here's just a little Python list of strings of the software. It's again SPSS, commercial software, Stata, commercial software, R, open source software, and you can see the ones that were used. So let's just look down here. I've got 2016 and 2020 there, and you can see at least there's some decrease in the proportion of all over for 2020, so 2020 in red. So this is the proportions of the software that was listed here. And so R has gone up quite a bit. And we see at least all the other commercial software. So that's what I want to talk to you about. This is a JupyterCon conference. We're talking about open source software. And for me, on the ground, teaching, using this for my own research to help research amongst our trainees in the faculty, but also teaching it. It is about this pervasive nature of commercial software still being used. And the idea that the top universities would have site licenses, so no one purchases the software, but as soon as they leave, and they have to purchase this themselves, they are not empowered. No one's empowered to use open source software. And for me personally, that has been a fight that I've been fighting for quite some time. To use and to teach open source software, no matter what the language, open source language, but using an open source development environment like the Jupyter Notebook, such a brilliant environment to share your research in, to teach others with, and whether that be biomedical research as my field, or also in my other teaching using mathematics and physics. What a wonderful environment to code in, and to empower people, to teach people how to use this so that when they leave, they can go back to their home nations and make those graphs that we see there look a bit better. Now, we have a specific setup that I need to tell you about in South Africa, as I suppose in many other places, where people from slightly more disadvantaged areas come and they come and learn. And in my specific field in surgery, they come and learn to become surgeons. And once those 5 years are up, 4 to 5 years to train a surgeon, a specialist surgeon in South Africa, they go back to their home nations. And there's a whole story behind those things. But we need for them to go back, and we need for them to be empowered to continue their research there, because to qualify as a specialist in South Africa, not only do you have to do your training and pass your exams, but you've also got to partake in research. So the empowerment of those people should not be in commercial software, which they will not have access to once they go back, or a proportion of them certainly won't have that. And it's about empowering people with this open source software. For me, that is definitely one of the solutions to the sorry state of the plots and graphs that we've seen up there. And has it been an easy journey? Most definitely not. I want to tell you directly that I've been told that there's no place for what I do. Those words certainly came up. I'm obviously going to concentrate on the negative here. There's also a lot of positive. But to introduce open source software and the use of open source software is not always popular, and it's not the easy path. You see the use of SPSS quite pervasive in my field. And to motivate systems for open source software to become the norm is not easy. But we've had success, and I certainly love using it. And I know so many people who enjoy using it and have found tremendous benefit from this. So I'm just trying to show you that we really can do better. And I truly believe that the Jupyter notebooks and the use of open source software is the way to go. Now, I want to show you how it enriches my life and how I try to use it to enrich the lives of those around me. But this is a hospital, and I've got to go home and take a shower, and I'll speak to you again. Coffee time. So when we're at the hospital, I try to give you some idea of how research is really concentrated in certain parts of the world, how the potential of a large part of the world is not realized. And as far as medical science is concerned, but also all sorts of other science, there's so many outstanding questions that we can answer if we just allowed more people to do research. And it's my great belief that if we use open source software, open source computer languages, and if we use notebooks such as the Jupyter notebook, we can really do so much more. So as promised, I wanted to show you a little bit of how it enriches my life, how I've enjoyed Jupyter notebooks, and just a little bit of what I do with it. So here we have one of my websites. It's just never up to date, as one tends to not to have enough time to update these, but at least it gives you some indication of some of the resources that I have put out there. So I want to tell you a little bit about my place of work. The University of Cape Town is certainly a leading institution, tertiary education institution on the African continent. But as with many other places, we do struggle with resource constraint. Now, you might imagine that a lot of research takes place, and especially in the health sciences faculty at the university. But the resource constraint is such that we don't even, for the most part, employ a single statistician. And that's sort of the short story of how I became the de facto statistician as well of the health sciences faculty. Now, I mentioned to become a specialist, you in South Africa, at least if you want to register with the Health Professions Council, you have to do your training for 5 years. That's postgraduate training, and do your examinations and also do a research project. Now, imagine more than 500 postgraduate students having to do their research projects, but there's just no statistician to help them. And of course, again, as with many other institutions, we're very bad at formally introducing research methodology and also data science, data analysis. Certainly there are some undergraduate, a couple of weeks that the students get to spend on that, but that really doesn't scratch the surface, and it is not formalized in any great way. And certainly for postgraduate students, to be a postgraduate student in the faculty really means you've got to work hard. You've got to be at the patient's bedside, and how you do your studies and how you do your research, that's your problem. That takes place after hours. There's certainly no dedicated time allowed for that. The workload just does not allow for that sort of thing. So no formal training in any form of data science or data analysis. I'm going to generalize quite a bit. What happens on the ground is that a lot of people don't get to do good analysis on any form of data that they do gather. Some are very fortunate, the minority, that they do get involved with a larger research project, which some of the senior people might be involved in, and those are usually funded. And that funding allows someone to buy some time from a statistician to do their research. I have found that a very poor way to go about things, because those postgraduate students always walk away from that experience with a bunch of numbers given to them with no explanation as to why a statistical test was chosen. There's certainly no enrichment in that. Again, I'm really generalizing, but I want to talk to you from the heart, the things that I do experience. Most of the students, or most people involved with postgraduate research, will not end up in such well-resourced little projects or projects, and they just have to fend for themselves. And that is where this groundswell of me starting to help so many postgraduate students and undergraduate students eventually, and helping to do their research, but also to understand their research. And the Jupyter notebooks have just allowed me to solve that problem. It's so easy to install a language such as Python, and sit down with them and work through their problems. And I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like. And also just to teach it at scale, to have lectures and to teach this. Again, not easy. And I think many of you who've tried this know that it's not easy. I think Wes McKinney said at his keynote address at JupyterCon in 2017 that no one's ever been fired for purchasing a license for MATLAB. And that is certainly true with us as anywhere else. I think we've just bought a license. Anyway, to introduce open source software and to introduce the use of tools such as Jupyter notebooks really is not easy. And I've showed you how pervasive the use of, say, for instance, SPSS is. So really not an easy task. But we move forward day by day, step by step, and so much so that we've expanded into other universities, into other countries by now. And the notebook, the Jupyter notebook has really just allowed me to solve so many problems and to enrich so many people's lives. So with there being no de facto or proper statistician at the faculty, and me becoming the de facto statistician, and teacher of all sorts of other things, data science related. One of the first things I did a couple of years ago is to convince the university that we should sign up for one of the leading massive open online course providers. And we signed both with FutureLearn and with Coursera. Put a proposal forward after we signed with Coursera, and I put forward a course. And now I have 3 courses on Coursera. Now, the first one I'll just show you here, that's Understanding Clinical Research Behind the Statistics. It's really been a phenomenal course, and has allowed me at least to reach out a massive audience. We are, you can see down there, 242,000 reviews, and we certainly had in excess of 80,000 students, and a very highly rated course, so much so that for the 4 years running, Class Central has had this in the list of top courses all over the world. Now, there's no Jupyter Notebook in here, but it is a course whereby I can just teach students in a similar position than our students, and not only medical, just what to do, what research is all about. When you read a paper, what does it mean when someone says a confidence interval? What does it mean when someone says a normal distribution or a p-value? And that is what this course is about, and just talks straight to the students and just teaches them that fundamentals if they miss those fundamentals in their training, both as undergraduate and postgraduate students. There are no notebooks in that course, but I do run on YouTube this service as well, whereby I use Jupyter Notebooks and Python in conjunction with that course, just to teach the use of a Jupyter Notebook, to teach the use of Python, and how to do your research. And this is, of course, the ancillary course here on YouTube that is just in support of my first course there on Coursera to support the students. So let me just run you through what it would look like. Let's increase the screen size a little bit. There we go. I mean, if I do sit with a student and we do look at their research, this is typically what will happen. You can see that it's quite easy just to have these little links inside, and I can put to the student there the descriptive statistics, the research questions, and the student, a postgraduate student, was supposed to give a talk as well. And so that's just a part of the talk, and very easy to import the data and then take them through just the analysis and how they would use this to transfer this information into a report, either for publication or as a talk, as I've mentioned there. And again, I'll get back to the elegance of the Jupyter Notebook and the way that you can just collaborate with someone else or consider someone, this is their first research project ever, and how this just allows you to have that discussion with the postgraduate student. And a really phenomenal experience. And I think I've had so many students now, in excess of 100 postgraduate students doing their master's degrees and doctoral students as well, and just a lovely environment to do all of this in. One of my other courses on Coursera is on Julia. Now, as much as I love Python, I really do love Julia, and I really got involved with Julia quite a long time ago. And Julia just solves so many of the problems. Those of you who know Julia know how it tries to solve the two-language problems. There's a new language. There are some problems inherent with that, but absolutely a fantastic language. And this is a course that I put together with one of my colleagues in the mathematics department over at the main campus. And it's just Julia for scientific computing. And we just teach how to use Julia, and it's all done in Jupyter Notebooks. Of course, we host these notebooks on Coursera, but also on GitHub, and I'll talk a little bit about GitHub a bit later. So I do the honors section of this course, and that is really about just teaching data science, how to use Julia to do data science, and all using the Jupyter Notebooks. Have a look at this course if you're interested. So I've got the 3 courses on Coursera, but I also use other platforms. Unfortunately, to produce courses for Coursera, it's quite expensive. And these courses, the second 2 courses, had to be done via self-funding. There just certainly is no funding available in a resource-constrained environment such as ours to just have money lying around to make these courses. So even though they have benefited so many in the world, it really is difficult. And I would absolutely love to make more courses on Coursera, since the feedback that you get is so absolutely phenomenal. I think that is something that makes me get up every day, put a smile on my face, and empowers me to do more. The feedback from the students are just absolutely phenomenal. So yes, I use Udemy as well, and I've got 4 courses at the moment on Udemy, and I'd love to expand on those as well and make them available to students. And we can see biostatistics fundamentals using Python, another one of my courses where I use Jupyter Notebooks and Python just to teach biostatistics, and really from the ground up, including a demo of an actual research project, just to get the students up to speed with how to use Python and Jupyter Notebooks. Now, that's not the only thing that you can do in health sciences. I've shown you that R is perhaps, or at least is in the lead when it comes to using open source languages in the health sciences. And I also have courses on campus and online where I use R. So this is just where I put a small proportion of the work that I do in R. And I think many of you will know about R pubs. And it just allows me to put these documents out there and just really play around. And you can see all sorts of courses that and topics that I've talked about. You can see logistic regression there, nonlinear modeling, discrete time series modeling, plotting and modeling with R, statistics using the tidyverse, an introduction to R. And one of my favorite topics starts down here. Basic neural networks. And as you move up, you can see the poor performance of deep learning models, regularization, dropout, implementing regularization and dropout in Keras, improving techniques in neural network training, cross-entropy, deep neural networks for regression problems, examples of a convolutional neural network, just neural networks, deep neural networks, machine learning is one of my absolute favorite topics and something that I teach as well. And on my RPubs site, at least, you can find some of my training material using not a Jupyter notebook, unfortunately, but using RStudio, but just putting the knowledge and information out there free of charge for everyone. Together with that, GitHub. So GitHub is a favorite site of mine, and I've certainly learned a lot on GitHub. And I've got about, I see 32 repositories there, and I've had them some time. The most important one, I should say, or maybe first of all the other ones, is all my courses, and you'll see some of the others to follow, my other work to follow. Most of these things, most of the notebooks I will host on GitHub. The one down here, MIT OCW Linear Algebra 1806, Gilbert Strang. Now that was one of the courses that I enjoyed so much that's available on OpenCourseware, MIT's OpenCourseware. MIT, of course, a fantastic place, and one day when I grow up and when I become an adult, I want to work at MIT. Anyway, I contacted Gilbert Strang and said that those were so wonderful. Would he really mind if I just made a set of Jupyter notebooks about each and one of his lectures? And he got back to me almost immediately and was very enthusiastic about them and said, please go ahead and do that. So each one of those lectures in 1806 on the MIT OCW website became a Jupyter notebook. Now, as of late, I've been slowly starting to redo them. In this era of COVID-19, it's very difficult to find time, but certainly I'm trying to redo all of these and modernize them a little bit. And certainly, as far as someone who doesn't do this full time, I like the 382 stars. Of course, that's nothing compared to what most of you would have on your GitHub repositories, but for me, so that's great. And the feedback of that really was phenomenal and had quite a bit of written on it, especially on social media, and I really enjoyed doing that. But as you can see, most of my other courses there, all the work, all the Jupyter notebooks will definitely be on GitHub. And certainly, as I mentioned, a resource, really, GitHub, that means so much to me as well, and learning from others, and especially the ability to open the Jupyter notebooks and have a look at the code that people do put together. Now, just to get to perhaps my favorite repository of all time, my favorite resource of all time, and that's YouTube. When I was an undergraduate student, when none of this existed, what a poor place the world was, and how rich it is now. Just to be able to open your laptop and just find the information and knowledge that you desire, just to be taught by some of the greatest people on earth, and it's all there. And you can learn any language, you can learn how to use Jupyter notebooks. Almost anything is available on YouTube, and really one of my favorites. You can see there, for someone who tries to put some things out on YouTube, 8,000 subscribers, not too bad for an old academic like myself. 1.196 million views, that's at least not too bad. And I really do enjoy putting things out on YouTube. All in all, I have in excess of 1,400 lectures out on YouTube. And if we just look at some of my playlists now, this is really where things get crazy, because I just add to this as I have time. That means 2 o'clock in the morning, I might record something. Early in the morning, I might record something. After theater, I might record something whenever I have time, which means none of these playlists are done. And I continuously work on all of them. But there's such a variety there. You can see Julia on Coursera there. So again, as we have Julia for Scientific Computing course on Coursera, I do also put out additional work. Julia is such a fast-paced as far as the changes in the languages are concerned, because it is such a young language, that I do put some extra stuff out there. Now, mathematics is really the one of the academic loves of my life. And I've got, when I look through here, I always notice how much mathematics I do have on here. There's a course on introducing linear algebra, for instance, up there. I've got some stuff on deep learning. Now, this introduction to deep learning, those are the set of lectures that go with our pubs documents that you'd seen before. Certainly there's some stuff here on statistics. Now, one of my favorite things to teach is abstract algebra. So I see I've got 71 lectures already there on abstract algebra, and certainly one of the mathematics topics that is near and dear to my heart, and I absolutely love teaching abstract algebra. Let's carry on. Let's see what else. There's Python for linear algebra. Certainly it's got to be there. Now, symbolic Python in a Jupyter Notebook. That is symbolic Python. SymPy is one of my absolute favorite libraries, and I do love using it to teach all things mathematics. What else do we have here? Let's scroll down. Learning medical statistics with Python and Jupyter Notebooks. There we go. I've got a playlist on that as well. And then another course of 92 lectures on linear algebra. Now we're moving a little bit away from Jupyter Notebooks. These are getting a bit old, long in the tooth now, and certainly I wasn't using Jupyter Notebooks there. There's 101 lectures on advanced calculus and multivariable calculus. You can see the smile on my face because I absolutely love mathematics. There's a second course in differential equations. Physics, another one of the topics that I love so much. So there's some lectures on special relativity. What else have I got on physics there? I have wave-particle duality, light and optics, waves, nuclear physics and radioactivity, the atom, certainly all sorts of things, mathematics and physics related. I absolutely love doing that. And as I have time, I really want to add that. Oh, there's my course on differential equations, 113 lectures there. Really, I enjoy using Jupyter Notebooks. I'll say it a million times over. What a wonderful environment, both to do your work in, but also to collaborate with others and to teach others. How many students do I now have who've gone away all over the world and they use Jupyter Notebooks? And I love seeing some of their work. They keep me informed of all of their work. But we have so much more to do. I think that the time is right for everyone, all institutions all over the world, just to embrace Jupyter Notebooks and to embrace open source languages, both for data science, but also for the more hardcore sciences like mathematics. It's so easy to teach mathematics using a Jupyter Notebook. And I would really love just to have more time to work on this and just create, collaborate, and explore and create new things just using these tools. Absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. Big smile on my face. Well, that's enough from this section. What I want to do now is just to take you on a little journey. My wife and myself, we love nature and we love going on little mini adventures. And of late, that's all we have is little mini adventures. When I do get a chance to break away from the hospital and working with Jupyter Notebooks, we go on our little mini adventures. So join us.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, 'cause there's excitement in the chase, this I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run towards the wind and let the challenge draw me in, 'cause I want more.